Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest waves. What happens when a young Navy petty officer, assigned to what seems like the most insignificant post on base, becomes the center of a story that will challenge everything she thought she knew about respect, leadership, and her own worth? Marina Rodriguez never expected that standing at a gate would change her entire military career. She certainly never imagined that a single salute from the most decorated SEAL commander on the base would set in motion events that would test her courage, reveal hidden truths about the military hierarchy, and ultimately transform not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. This isn't just a story about military protocol or following orders. It's about what happens when someone finally sees your value, when respect is given where it was never expected, and when one person's decision to do what's right creates a ripple effect that no one could have predicted. What Marina discovers is that being stationed at the entrance wasn't a punishment or an oversight. The morning started like any other, with Marina arriving 15 minutes early to receive the overnight reports from the departing guard. Seaman Peterson, a veteran sailor nearing retirement, handed over the logbook and made his usual complaints about the overnight shift being too quiet and too long. Marina listened politely, knowing that Peterson's grumbling was more habit than genuine complaint. As Peterson gathered his belongings and prepared to leave, he paused and looked at Marina with an expression she hadn't seen from him before. "You know, Rodriguez, I've been doing this job for 3 months now, and I've never seen anyone take it as seriously as you do. Makes me wonder if I've been doing it wrong all this time." Marina was surprised by the unexpected compliment. Peterson had always been cordial, but had never shown particular interest in her approach to the duty.
"I just try to do my best, Seaman Peterson."
"Same as anyone else." Peterson shook his head. "No, not same as anyone else. Most people see this gate duty as punishment or busy work. You treat it like it matters. That's different." He picked up his gear bag and slung it over his shoulder. "Anyway, just thought you should know someone's been paying attention." After Peterson left, Marina took her position at the gate with his words still echoing in her mind. She had begun to wonder if her dedication was pointless, if her efforts to maintain high standards, in what others saw as a meaningless assignment, were simply wasted energy. Peterson's observation reminded her that someone was always watching, even when it didn't feel that way. The morning traffic was typical for a Friday, base personnel arriving for their shifts, contractors checking in for various projects, and the occasional family member visiting someone stationed on base. Marina processed each person with the same careful attention, checking identification thoroughly, verifying credentials against her access lists, and providing clear directions when needed. Around 10:30, she noticed a convoy of 3 black SUVs approaching the gate. This was unusual for the time of day, as the SEAL teams typically conducted their movements during early morning or late evening hours. Marina prepared herself for what was likely to be a higher security check-in process. The first vehicle stopped at her station, and she approached the driver's side window. The driver was a Navy petty officer she didn't recognize, wearing the kind of casual uniform typically associated with special operations units. He handed her a folder containing what appeared to be movement orders and identification for multiple personnel.
"Special Operations Convoy, Petty Officer Rodriguez," the driver said. "We have clearance for the training facility."
Marina began reviewing the paperwork, noting the signatures and clearance codes.
Everything appeared to be in order, but something about the driver's manner suggested this wasn't a routine training exercise. There was an intensity to his bearing that spoke of real operational preparation rather than practice scenarios. As she processed the first vehicle's documentation, Marina became aware that the occupants of the other vehicles had gotten out and were standing near their SUVs. This was highly unusual. Typically, personnel remained in their vehicles during gate processing unless specifically requested to exit for security reasons. When Marina looked up from the paperwork, she realized that all of the men standing beside the vehicles were looking directly at her. They were all clearly special operations personnel, with the kind of physical conditioning and bearing that marked them as elite operators. Among them was the officer who had spoken to her the previous day, though she still didn't know his identity or rank. Marina handed the documentation back to the driver and stepped back to signal that the first vehicle was cleared to proceed. Instead of moving forward, however, the driver put the vehicle in park and also got out, joining the group of men who continued to watch her with what appeared to be respectful attention. The officer from the previous day stepped forward, and Marina noticed for the first time the insignia on his uniform. The silver oak leaves identified him as a commander, and the special warfare pin on his chest confirmed that he was a SEAL officer. This was clearly someone of significant importance on the base. "Petty Officer Rodriguez," Commander Mitchell said, his voice carrying across the space between them with unmistakable authority. I want you to know that your dedication to duty and commitment to excellence have been observed and appreciated. Marina wasn't sure how to respond. She was aware that the other operators were listening intently, and she sensed that this moment was significant in ways she didn't fully understand. Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my job. No, Commander Mitchell replied firmly. You're doing much more than that. You're demonstrating the kind of military bearing and attention to detail that represents the best of what we ask from our sailors. In a position where many would simply go through the motions, you have maintained the highest standards of professionalism and service. Marina felt her face flush with a mixture of pride and embarrassment. She wasn't accustomed to such direct praise, especially from senior officers, and certainly not in front of what appeared to be an entire special operations team. Commander Mitchell continued. Excellence is not determined by the visibility of your assignment or the recognition you receive. Excellence is determined by the standards you maintain when you think no one is watching. You have demonstrated that excellence consistently. What happened next would be burned into Marina's memory forever. Commander Mitchell, one of the most decorated and respected officers on the base, came to attention and rendered a sharp, precise military salute. The gesture was entirely unnecessary according to military protocol, as officers were not required to salute enlisted personnel first. It was a sign of respect that transcended rank and regulation. Marina automatically returned the salute, her training taking over even as her mind struggled to process what was happening. As she held the salute, she became aware that every other member of the SEAL team had also come to attention and was rendering the same gesture of respect. For several seconds, the entire group held the salute, creating a moment of profound military ceremony at what had previously been Marina's isolated and routine duty post. When they finally dropped their salutes, Marina felt as though something fundamental had changed, not just in her understanding of her role, but in her understanding of what respect and recognition could mean. Commander Mitchell stepped closer to Marina and spoke in a voice loud enough for the other operators to hear clearly. Petty Officer Rodriguez, I want you and everyone present to understand something important. Military excellence is not about the glamour of your assignment or the excitement of your mission. Military excellence is about bringing your absolute best to whatever task you are given, regardless of how small or routine it might seem. He gestured toward Marina. This sailor has demonstrated that excellence every day for 3 weeks in an assignment that receives no recognition and offers no excitement. She has maintained perfect standards because maintaining perfect standards is who she is, not because anyone was watching or because she expected reward. One of the other operators, a senior chief petty officer with extensive combat ribbons, stepped forward. Commander, if I may, he said. Mitchell nodded permission. The senior chief looked directly at Marina. Petty officer, I've been in special operations for 15 years, and I've served with some of the finest warriors this country has ever produced. What the commander just showed you by saluting you first is something I've seen maybe 3 times in my entire career. It's reserved for people who embody the kind of quiet professionalism that makes everything else possible. Marina felt overwhelmed by the attention and praise, but also deeply moved by the recognition. For weeks, she had struggled with feelings of being forgotten and wasted. Now, she was learning that her efforts had not only been noticed, but had earned the respect of some of the most elite operators in the military. Another SEAL operator, a lieutenant with the weathered look of extensive field experience, added his voice to the conversation. Ma'am, most people don't understand that special operations exists because of people like you. The flashy missions and the dramatic operations are only possible because thousands of sailors like you do their jobs perfectly every single day, whether anyone notices or not. Commander Mitchell reclaimed the conversation. Petty Officer Rodriguez, I want you to understand that what happened here today is not just about recognition. It's about understanding your value and your potential. Excellence in small things leads to opportunities in larger things, but only if that excellence is genuine and consistent. Marina found her voice. Thank you, sir. All of you. I didn't expect anything like this. That's exactly why you deserve it, Mitchell replied. People who do excellent work for recognition are performing. People who do excellent work because it's who they are, those are the people we build our military around. The senior chief stepped forward again. Petty officer, can I ask you something? Marina nodded, still processing the surreal nature of the entire encounter. What made you decide to maintain such high standards in this assignment? Most people would have seen gate duty as a chance to coast, or as punishment to endure. Marina thought for a moment before answering. My parents taught me that how you do anything is how you do everything. They worked incredibly hard to give me opportunities. And I joined the Navy, because I wanted to serve something bigger than myself. I figured that if the Navy put me at this gate, then making sure this gate was perfectly maintained was how I could serve. The operators exchanged glances that Marina couldn't interpret, but she sensed approval in their expressions. Commander Mitchell stepped back and addressed the group. Gentlemen, this is what we're fighting to protect. This is what American military service looks like at its finest. This sailor represents the values and the dedication that make everything we do possible and worthwhile. He turned back to Marina. Petty Officer Rodriguez, you should know that your assignment to gate duty was not random, and it was not punishment. Sometimes the military needs to identify people who can be trusted with important responsibilities, and the only way to do that is to see how they handle responsibilities that seem unimportant.
Marina felt a chill of realization. Sir, are you saying this was some kind of test?
I'm saying that excellence always reveals itself regardless of the circumstances.
What happens next in your career will be determined by what you've already proven about yourself. The convoy loaded back into their vehicles, but the atmosphere had completely changed. What had begun as a routine gate check had become something that Marina sensed would alter the trajectory of her military service in ways she couldn't yet imagine. As the SUVs drove away toward the training facility, Marina remained at her post. But everything felt different. The isolation and routine that had characterized her previous weeks had been replaced by a sense of purpose and recognition that she had never experienced before. She didn't know that Commander Mitchell had already made several phone calls that morning, or that her personnel file was being reviewed by people far above her current chain of command. She didn't know that the display of respect at the gate had been witnessed by other base personnel who would spread the story throughout the command. What Marina did know was that she had been seen, truly seen, by people whose opinions mattered. The salute from Commander Mitchell and his team had been more than a gesture of respect. It had been a recognition of who she was and what she represented. For the remainder of her shift, Marina stood at the gate with a new understanding of her role and her potential. The work hadn't changed, but her perspective had been transformed. She was no longer just checking identification and directing traffic. She was demonstrating the kind of military bearing that elite operators found worthy of their respect. As the day ended and she prepared to turn over her post, Marina reflected on the morning's events. She had learned that recognition could come from unexpected sources and that excellence was always noticed by people who understood its value. Most importantly, she had learned that her commitment to doing her best, regardless of the assignment, had been the right choice all along. Word traveled fast on a military base, especially when it involved something as unusual as a SEAL commander saluting an enlisted gate guard. By the time Marina finished her shift on Friday evening, rumors and variations of the story had already begun circulating throughout the base community. Some versions were accurate, others had been embellished beyond recognition, but all of them had one thing in common. They identified Marina Rodriguez as someone who had earned extraordinary respect from the base's most elite unit. Marina herself was largely unaware of the growing attention her encounter with Commander Mitchell had generated. She went through her weekend routine of calling her family, doing laundry, and catching up on personal correspondence, but she noticed that other sailors seemed to be looking at her differently. Conversations would pause when she entered the mess hall, and people she had never spoken to before nodded respectfully when they passed her in the corridors. On Saturday afternoon, while Marina was at the base gym, she was approached by Petty Officer First Class Sarah Chen, a communications specialist who worked in the base operations center. Marina knew Sarah by sight but had never had a conversation with her. "Excuse me, are you Marina Rodriguez?" Sarah asked, even though Marina's name tape made the question unnecessary. "Yes, I am," Marina replied, pausing her workout routine. "I heard about what happened at the gate yesterday, with Commander Mitchell and the SEAL team." Sarah's tone was respectful but curious. "Is it true that they all saluted you?" Marina felt uncomfortable discussing the incident, partly because she wasn't sure she fully understood its significance herself.
There was a brief interaction, yes.
"Commander Mitchell spoke to me about my duty performance." Sarah's expression suggested she understood more about the situation than Marina did. "Look, I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but you should know that people are talking. What Commander Mitchell did, that doesn't happen. Ever. I've been on this base for 4 years, and I've never heard of anything like it." "What do you mean?" Marina asked, though she suspected she wasn't going to like the answer. "Commander Mitchell is probably the most respected officer on this entire base. The man has more combat decorations than most people have ribbons total. For him to salute an enlisted person first in front of his entire team,
That's like a public declaration that you represent something he considers worthy of his deepest respect.
Marina felt a growing sense of unease.
She had appreciated the recognition, but she was beginning to understand that the incident had implications far beyond her own career. Sarah, I was just doing my job. I don't understand why everyone is making such a big deal about this. That's exactly the point, Sarah replied. You were just doing your job, but you were doing it better than most people do jobs they consider important. Commander Mitchell recognized that, and now everyone else is starting to pay attention too. On Sunday, Marina received a call from her younger sister Isabella, who was finishing her senior year of high school and considering military service herself. Isabella had always looked up to Marina and had been one of her strongest supporters when she decided to enlist. Marina, I got a call from Cousin McGill yesterday, Isabella said, her voice excited. He said someone posted something on social media about you and some famous Navy commander. Is that true? Marina was alarmed. What are you talking about? Posted what on social media? Something about a SEAL commander saluting you at your base. Miguel saw it on some military Facebook group and recognized your name. He said people were calling you a hero or something. Marina felt her stomach drop. The last thing she wanted was public attention or social media coverage of her military service. Isabella, I need you to help me figure out what's being said and where. This could be a serious problem. After spending an hour on the phone with her sister tracking down the various posts and comments, Marina discovered that someone had recorded part of the Friday morning incident on their cell phone and posted it with a caption about real military heroes. The video was grainy and distant, but it clearly showed the moment when Commander Mitchell and his team saluted her at the gate. The post had been shared dozens of times and had generated hundreds of comments, mostly positive but some critical. Several people had questioned whether the incident was staged for publicity, while others debated whether gate duty was worthy of such recognition. What concerned Marina most was that her full name and base location were now being discussed by strangers on the internet. On Monday morning, Marina arrived at her gate assignment to find Chief Petty Officer Harris waiting for her with an expression she couldn't read. Harris had been her supervisor since her arrival at the base, but their interactions had been minimal and purely professional. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you before you take over the post, Harris said. His tone was serious but not unfriendly. Marina followed Harris to a small office adjacent to the security checkpoint. Harris closed the door and gestured for her to sit down. I'm going to be direct with you, Rodriguez. What happened here on Friday has created a situation that goes well beyond normal duty assignments. I've had calls from people I haven't heard from in years, all asking about you and your service record. Marina felt a knot forming in her stomach. Chief, I hope I haven't created any problems. I was just responding to Commander Mitchell's recognition. Harris held up a hand to stop her. You haven't done anything wrong. In fact, from what I understand, you've been doing everything exactly right. But you need to understand that when someone of Commander Mitchell's stature makes a public gesture like he did, it sends ripples throughout the entire command structure. What kind of ripples, Chief? Harris leaned back in his chair and studied Marina for a moment before answering. The kind that make people ask questions they should have been asking all along. Like why one of our most qualified junior sailors has been stuck at a gate assignment for 3 weeks. Like whether we're identifying and utilizing talent effectively. Like whether the people making assignment decisions are paying attention to the right things. Marina was beginning to understand that the Friday morning incident had implications she had never considered. Chief, are you saying that my gate assignment is being questioned? I'm saying that a lot of things are being questioned, Rodriguez, and that's probably a good thing. Harris opened a folder that had been sitting on his desk. I've been reviewing your service record, your training scores, and your performance evaluations. You know what I found? Marina shook her head. I found a sailor who should have been identified for advanced training or specialized assignment months ago. Your technical aptitude scores, your leadership evaluations, your physical fitness ratings, everything suggests someone who should be on a fast track for increased responsibility, not checking identification cards at a gate. The knot in Marina's stomach was getting tighter. Chief, if there were problems with my assignment, why wasn't this addressed before? Harris's expression became somewhat uncomfortable. Because sometimes bureaucracy gets in the way of good decision-making. Sometimes people get lost in the system because they don't complain loudly enough or because they don't have advocates in the right places. And sometimes it takes someone like Commander Mitchell to point out what should have been obvious all along. What happens now? Marina asked. Now, things are going to change for you, probably pretty quickly. I've already received inquiries from 3 different departments about your availability for transfer. Your name is on several lists that it probably should have been on months ago. Harris handed Marina a document from the folder. This is a request for you to interview for a position in the Intelligence Analysis Division. It came directly from the division chief, who apparently received a personal recommendation about your qualifications. Marina looked at the document with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Intelligence analysis was exactly the kind of work she had hoped for when she enlisted. Chief, how do you know this recommendation came because of what happened on Friday? Because the division chief called me personally on Saturday morning, something that has never happened in the 15 years I've been in this position. He specifically mentioned that your attention to detail and dedication to excellence had been brought to his attention by someone he described as a source whose judgment I trust completely. Over the next few days, Marina found herself in a series of meetings and interviews that would have seemed impossible just a week earlier. The Intelligence Division interview led to additional conversations with people from communications, logistics, and even the base commander's staff. Each conversation followed a similar pattern. Someone had heard about her performance and dedication, wanted to learn more about her background and interests, and seemed prepared to offer opportunities that far exceeded anything she had imagined. The attention was both exciting and overwhelming. Marina had spent weeks feeling invisible and forgotten, and now she was struggling to process the sudden interest from multiple departments. She began to understand that her consistent excellence in a seemingly minor assignment had been a more powerful demonstration of her capabilities than any formal evaluation or test could have provided. On Thursday afternoon, Marina received a call requesting her presence at a meeting she hadn't expected. Commander Mitchell wanted to speak with her privately in his office. Marina had never been to the SEAL compound area of the base, and the request filled her with both anticipation and nervousness. Commander Mitchell's office was spartanly decorated but filled with evidence of extensive operational experience. Combat ribbons, unit citations, and photographs of Mitchell with various military and political leaders covered one wall. The other walls displayed maps of global conflict zones and operational planning materials that Marina couldn't identify, but that clearly related to highly classified activities. Petty Officer Rodriguez, thank you for coming, Mitchell said, gesturing for her to sit in a chair across from his desk. I wanted to speak with you about what happened last Friday and what it means going forward. Marina sat down and tried to project confidence despite her nervousness. Sir, I want to thank you again for the recognition. It meant more to me than I can express. Mitchell leaned forward in his chair. Rodriguez, I need you to understand something important. What I did on Friday wasn't charity or encouragement. It was recognition of something real and valuable that I observed in your performance. But recognition comes with responsibility. Sir, I'm not sure I understand. You've demonstrated the kind of military bearing and commitment to excellence that we need in positions of real responsibility. The question now is whether you're prepared for what that means. Mitchell opened a folder on his desk. I've been reviewing the opportunities that have become available to you over the past week. Intelligence analysis, advanced communications training, logistics management, all positions that would utilize your skills more effectively than gate duty. Yes, sir. I'm grateful for the options. But I want to offer you something different, Mitchell said. Something that would be more challenging than any of those positions, but also more rewarding if you're up for it. Marina felt her pulse quicken. What kind of opportunity, sir? Mitchell's expression became more serious. The SEAL teams work with support personnel who meet the same standards of excellence and reliability that we demand from our operators. These positions require absolute discretion, flawless attention to detail, and the ability to perform under pressure in situations where mistakes can have serious consequences. Marina realized that Mitchell was describing something far beyond anything she had considered possible. Sir, are you offering me a position with the SEAL teams? I'm offering you the opportunity to apply and train for such a position. The selection process is rigorous, the training is demanding, and the standards are unforgiving. But if you succeed, you would be working in support of some of the most important operations conducted by this military. Marina felt as though her entire world had shifted. A week ago, she had been wondering if her military career would consist entirely of routine assignments that utilized none of her potential. Now, she was being offered the chance to work with the most elite units in the Navy. Sir, I would be honored to have that opportunity, she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite her excitement. Mitchell nodded approvingly. I thought you might feel that way, but I want you to understand what you're accepting. The people I work with operate at the absolute highest levels of military professionalism. There are no second chances, no allowances for good intentions, and no forgiveness for anything less than excellence. I understand, sir. Do you? Mitchell asked, his tone becoming more intense. Because what I saw at that gate was impressive, but it was also just the beginning. If you accept this path, you'll be tested in ways that will make gate duty look like a vacation. You'll be held to standards that will challenge everything you think you know about your own capabilities. Marina thought about her weeks at the gate, about the isolation and the doubt, about the decision to maintain her higher standards even when she felt forgotten. Sir, I think those challenges are exactly what I need to find out who I really am and what I'm capable of becoming. Commander Mitchell smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Rodriguez, I believe you might be exactly right about that. Marina's transition from gate duty to SEAL support training began immediately and without ceremony. On Friday morning, instead of reporting to the main entrance, she found herself at a different area of the base entirely, a complex of buildings and training facilities that she had never seen before and that weren't marked on any of the base maps available to general personnel. Chief Warrant Officer Rebecca Hayes met Marina at the entrance to the training facility. Hayes was a compact, intense woman in her mid-30s whose bearing immediately communicated both competence and authority. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture perfect, and her gaze seemed to take in every detail of Marina's appearance and demeanor in a single glance. Petty Officer Rodriguez, Hayes said without preamble. I am Chief Hayes, and for the next 8 weeks I will be responsible for determining whether you have what it takes to support special operations. Before we begin, I need you to understand something crucial. Marina came to attention, sensing that this moment would set the tone for everything that followed. Commander Mitchell's recommendation brought you here, but it will not keep you here. From this moment forward, you will be evaluated solely on your performance, your ability to learn, and your capacity to meet the standards we require. The respect you earned at that gate was real, but it was earned under relatively easy conditions. What we do here is not easy. Hayes began walking toward the main building and Marina fell into step beside her. The SEAL teams operate in environments where precision, reliability, and absolute attention to detail can mean the difference between mission success and mission failure, between life and death. The support personnel who work with these teams must meet the same standards of excellence under far more demanding circumstances than checking identification cards. As they entered the building, Marina noticed that everything was different from the standard Navy facilities she was accustomed to. The corridors were wider, the security was more obvious, and the general atmosphere suggested a level of seriousness and intensity that was unlike anything she had experienced. Your training will cover communications protocols, intelligence analysis, logistics coordination, and crisis management, Hayes continued. You will learn to process and analyze information under time pressure, to maintain perfect accuracy when dealing with classified materials, and to function effectively in high-stress situations where there is no margin for error. They entered a classroom that looked more like a high-tech operations center than a typical training facility. Multiple computer workstations, large display screens, and sophisticated communications equipment filled the space. Several other trainees were already present, all of them looking focused and somewhat intimidated by their surroundings. Marina quickly realized that she was not the only person who had been selected for this training program. The other candidates included sailors from various specialties, all of whom appeared to be highly qualified and motivated. What struck her most was the diversity of backgrounds represented. Communications specialists, intelligence analysts, logistics experts, and even a few people whose specialties she couldn't identify. Hayes addressed the group. Ladies and gentlemen, you are here because someone in the special operations community has identified you as having potential value to our missions. This training program will determine whether that potential can be developed into actual capability. A petty officer first class seated near the front of the room raised his hand. Chief Hayes, can you tell us more about what our roles would be if we complete this training successfully? Hayes's expression remained serious. Your roles would be to provide the kind of support that allows SEAL operators to focus entirely on their primary missions. That might mean managing communications during complex operations, analyzing intelligence data under extreme time pressure, or coordinating logistics for missions that cannot afford any delays or mistakes. She paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with each trainee. Some of you are wondering whether you belong here, whether you have the qualifications or experience necessary to succeed. I want to address that directly. Hayes walked to the front of the classroom and turned to face the group. Commander Mitchell and the other officers who recommended you for this program were not impressed by your resume or your previous assignments. They were impressed by something far more important: your demonstrated commitment to excellence, regardless of circumstances. Marina felt a flutter of recognition, remembering Mitchell's words about excellence in small things leading to opportunities in larger things. Each of you has shown the ability to maintain high standards when no one was watching, to take pride in work that others might consider routine or unimportant, and to find ways to excel even when your assignments didn't seem to offer opportunities for distinction. Hayes clicked a remote control, and a large screen at the front of the room displayed what appeared to be a mission timeline with multiple simultaneous activities. This is what a typical SEAL operation looks like from a support perspective. At any given moment, dozens of people are coordinating communications, analyzing incoming intelligence, managing equipment and supplies, and monitoring changing conditions that could affect the mission. The complexity of the display was overwhelming. Marina could see multiple information streams, real-time status updates, and decision points that seemed to require constant attention and immediate response. Your job, if you earn these positions, would be to ensure that none of these support functions ever fail or delay the primary mission. You would be responsible for anticipating problems before they occur, finding solutions to challenges that haven't been encountered before, and maintaining perfect accuracy under conditions of extreme stress and time pressure. A petty officer second class from the communications division raised her hand. Chief Hayes, what happens if we make mistakes during training? You learn from them, correct them, and continue improving, Hayes replied. What happens if you make mistakes after you complete training and are supporting actual operations is that people die. The room fell silent as the weight of that statement settled over the trainees, Hayes continued. I don't tell you this to frighten you, but to ensure you understand what we're asking of you. The SEAL teams trust their support personnel with their lives, and that trust must be earned through demonstrated excellence, under the most challenging possible conditions. Over the following days, Marina discovered that the training program was unlike anything she had experienced in her military career. The pace was relentless, the standards were unforgiving, and the complexity of the material seemed to increase exponentially each day. The communications training alone required her to master multiple systems simultaneously while processing incoming information from various sources and maintaining contact with different operational elements. During one exercise, she found herself coordinating between a SEAL team conducting a reconnaissance mission, a support vessel providing transportation, an intelligence unit analyzing real-time data, and a command center making tactical decisions based on the information she was collecting and relaying. The margin for error was essentially zero. A single miscommunication could compromise the entire exercise, and Marina learned that even small delays in processing information could cascade into major operational problems. What surprised her most was how much she enjoyed the challenge. The intensity and complexity that might have overwhelmed her just weeks earlier now felt energizing and engaging. She found herself staying late to practice difficult procedures, studying communications protocols during her off hours, and seeking additional training opportunities whenever possible. Marina wasn't the only trainee who was responding positively to the demanding program. The group had quickly developed a sense of camaraderie based on their shared commitment to meeting the extraordinary standards they faced. They studied together, practiced scenarios together, and supported each other through the more difficult aspects of the training. However, not everyone was adapting successfully to the program's demands. By the end of the second week, 2 trainees had been removed from the program for failing to meet performance standards. By the end of the 4th week, 2 more had voluntarily withdrawn, deciding that the stress and responsibility were more than they wanted to accept. Marina found herself emerging as one of the stronger performers in the group. Her attention to detail, developed during her weeks of gate duty, translated perfectly to the precision required for communications and intelligence work. Her ability to maintain focus under pressure, which had seemed irrelevant when checking identification cards, proved invaluable when processing multiple information streams simultaneously. Chief Hayes had begun giving Marina increasingly complex assignments, including scenarios that combined communications management, intelligence analysis, and crisis response. During one particularly challenging exercise, Marina found herself serving as the primary communications coordinator for a simulated hostage rescue operation that involved coordination between SEAL operators, local law enforcement, federal agents, and military command elements. The exercise lasted for 6 hours and required Marina to process hundreds of pieces of information while maintaining real-time communication with more than a dozen different personnel. At several points during the scenario, critical decisions depended on her ability to accurately relay intelligence data and coordinate timing between various operational elements. When the exercise concluded, Marina was exhausted but exhilarated. She had successfully managed every aspect of her assigned responsibilities without any significant errors or delays. More importantly, she had enjoyed the challenge and felt confident in her ability to handle even more complex scenarios. After the debriefing session, Chief Hayes asked Marina to remain behind for a private conversation. "Rodriguez, I want you to know that your performance during today's exercise was exceptional," Hayes said. You handled complexity and pressure that we typically don't introduce until much later in the training program. Marina felt a surge of pride but tried to maintain her professional demeanor. Thank you, Chief Hayes. I've been working hard to meet the standards. You've been exceeding the standards, Hayes replied. Which brings me to something I need to discuss with you. Hayes sat down across from Marina and opened a folder that contained what appeared to be evaluation reports and performance assessments. Your training has been accelerated because of your performance level. Normally, this program takes 8 weeks to complete. Based on your progress, we're recommending that you be moved to advanced training scenarios that will prepare you for immediate assignment to operational duties. Marina felt her heart rate increase. Chief Hayes, does that mean I would be working with actual SEAL teams on real missions? It means you would be working in support of actual operations, yes. But Marina, I need you to understand what that really means. Hayes' tone became more serious. Everything you've done so far has been training. The scenarios have been challenging, but they've also been controllable. Real operations involve variables that can't be predicted, complications that weren't planned for, and consequences that extend far beyond the training environment. Marina thought about her journey from the isolation of gate duty to the intensity of this training program. Each step had required her to discover capabilities she hadn't known she possessed and to meet standards she had never been asked to meet before. Chief Hayes, I think I'm ready for those challenges. Everything I've learned so far has prepared me for more responsibility, not less. Hayes smiled, the first time Marina had seen her display anything other than professional intensity. Rodriguez, I believe you might be exactly right about that, and I think you're going to find that the real work is even more rewarding than the training has been. As Marina left the training facility that evening, she reflected on how completely her life had changed in just a few weeks. The sailor who had stood at the gate feeling forgotten and underutilized had been transformed into someone preparing to support some of the most critical operations conducted by the United States military. She thought about Commander Mitchell's observation that excellence in small things led to opportunities in larger things. The gate assignment that had seemed like exile had actually been the foundation for everything that followed. Her commitment to maintaining high standards when no one seemed to be watching had prepared her for maintaining even higher standards when lives depended on her performance. Marina realized that she was no longer the same person who had struggled with feelings of invisibility and purposelessness. She had discovered reserves of capability and confidence that she hadn't known she possessed. More importantly, she had learned that true military service wasn't about the visibility of your assignment or the recognition you received. It was about becoming the kind of person who could be trusted with important responsibilities when they were offered. The transformation was far from complete. The real test would come when she began supporting actual operations, when the pressure was real and the consequences mattered. But Marina was no longer intimidated by the prospect of being tested. She had learned that challenges were opportunities to discover who she really was and what she was truly capable of achieving.